The Undelivered Letters, a medieval sleep journey. Picture yourself in the flickering candlelight of a medieval chamber where time moves like honey through autumn air. Tonight, we shall journey through the cobbled streets and castle halls of old Europe, following the ghostly trails of letters that never found their way home, written by quill on parchment, sealed with crimson wax, yet destined to remain forever unread. Some were penned in monastery cells but never left the scriptorium, others departed on horseback through morning mist, but vanished into the forests of time. In this age of stone towers and cathedral bells, when words traveled slower than the turning of seasons, every letter carried the weight of months, sometimes years of waiting. Each parchment was both prayer and desperate hope, inked with the very essence of the human heart. But not all found their intended souls. Let us now drift through their silent stories, as gentle as evening fog rolling across the Yorkshire moors. Imagine yourself walking through the narrow streets of a medieval town, where the scent of wood smoke mingles with the distant sound of monastery bells. The year is 1284, and in the cold scriptorium of Canterbury Abbey, Brother Augustine sits hunched over his writing desk. His fingers, stained with ink and cramped from hours of copying sacred texts, now move across parchment in his own private ritual. Each evening, after Compline prayers, he writes letters to his sister Margaret, who entered a convent in distant Normandy 20 years past. He tells her of the changing seasons in Kent, of the pilgrims who come seeking Becket's shrine, of his dreams that visit him in the pre-dawn hours. But the letters never leave his cell. They accumulate in a wooden box beneath his narrow bed, growing yellow with age, their words becoming prayers whispered only to the stone walls. The candle burns lower as we drift further into the night, and our journey carries us to the solar of a Norman castle, where Lady Isabel de Montfort sits by her narrow window, watching the harvest moon rise over the wheat fields. Her husband has been gone these 18 months, fighting in the Welsh marches, and she writes to him nightly by candlelight. Her letters speak of their young son's first steps, of the accounts she manages in his absence, of her fears that howl like winter wind through the castle's corridors. Each letter is carefully sealed with her family's crest, but the messenger who was to carry them fell ill with fever, and another was needed for urgent business with the king. The letters pile up in her cedar chest, unopened promises of love that age like fine wine in darkness. Feel your breathing slow as we wander deeper into medieval Europe, where the autumn rain patters against diamond-paned windows and the scent of rushes mingles with burning peat. In the trading city of Bruges, Master Willem the wool merchant sits in his counting-house, surrounded by ledgers and the tools of his prosperous trade. But tonight his mind wanders to his daughter Anna, who married a Venetian trader and sailed across the wine-dark Mediterranean 5 years ago. He writes her letters filled with news of the guild, of the changing fashions in Flemish cloth, of his aging joints that creak like ship's timbers in the morning cold. Each letter begins the same way. My dearest daughter, may this find you in good health. But the Venetian trading routes are treacherous, and ships disappear into storm-tossed seas. His letters wait in the harbor warehouse, patient as sleeping cats, their intended journey as uncertain as morning mist. The night deepens around us like a velvet cloak as we drift to the great cathedral of Chartres, where Master Guillaume the stonemason lies on his simple bed, his hand still aching from a day of carving angels' faces into holy stone. He writes to his brother Jean, who left their village in Picardy to seek fortune in the Holy Land. Guillaume's letters speak of the cathedral's slow progress, of the magnificent rose window that filters God's light into rainbow patterns, of his hope that Jean might return before the great work is finished. But the Crusader routes are uncertain, and news travels slowly across the Mediterranean. Letters pile up in the cathedral's treasury, blessed by countless prayers, but never finding their way to distant Jerusalem. As the abbey bell tolls midnight, we find ourselves in the court of Eleanor of Aquitaine, where a young troubadour named Bertrand composes letters to a lady whose name he dare not speak aloud. She is married to a powerful lord, and their love exists only in stolen glances across the great hall, and in the verses he writes by moonlight. His letters are poems of courtly love, speaking of her beauty in metaphors of spring flowers and morning dew, of his devotion as constant as the northern star. But such letters could mean death if discovered, so they remain hidden in his lute case, growing soft with age and the moisture of his sighs. The hours pass like centuries as we drift through the black forest, where a young novice nun named Sister Marguerite walks the moonlit cloisters of her abbey. She writes to her mother in distant Provence, letters filled with homesickness and questions about her vocation. She speaks of the harsh winters, of the abbess's stern discipline, of her doubts that flutter like moths around a candle flame. But her letters must be approved by the abbess before sending, and they reveal too much of her uncertain heart. They accumulate in her cell, unread confessions that age like pressed flowers between the pages of her prayer book. Feel your body growing heavy as we journey to the court of King Louis VII in Paris, where the royal scribe Philippe sits in the palace scriptorium, surrounded by official correspondence and royal decrees. But in his private hours, he writes to his childhood friend who became a parish priest in a remote village. His letters speak of the intrigues of court, of the king's moods that change like April weather, of his loneliness among the powerful. Yet his position requires discretion, and such personal letters could be seen as security risks. They remain in his private quarters, secrets shared only with the dancing shadows on the wall. The night wind carries us to a merchant's house in the Hanseatic city of Lübeck, where Master Hendrik, the spice trader, dreams of distant lands while his wife Greta tends their accounts. She writes to her sister who married a knight and moved to a castle in the Rhineland. Her letters speak of the exotic spices that fill their warehouse, of the strange tales told by foreign merchants, of her growing wealth and growing loneliness. But the political tensions between city-states make travel dangerous, and trusted messengers are few. Her letters wait in a strong-box, their parchment growing brittle with age. As dawn approaches but still seems far away, we find ourselves in the cell of a hermit monk named Brother Francis, who lives in solitude on a rocky island off the coast of Scotland. He writes to the world he left behind, letters addressed to no one and everyone, filled with his visions and his understanding of divine love. His letters speak of the changing seasons as reflected in the sea, of the seabirds that are his only companions, of the peace that comes from complete surrender to God's will. But there is no one to deliver his letters, no messenger to brave the dangerous waters. They accumulate in his stone cell, prayers that ascend only to heaven. Your breathing has found its natural rhythm now, slow and deep, as we drift to the scriptorium of the Abbey of Cluny, where an elderly monk named Brother Thomas copies his final letters to students he taught decades ago. His arthritis makes writing difficult, and his eyes strain in the candlelight, but he continues his nightly ritual. He speaks of the wisdom that comes with age, of the changes he has witnessed in the church, of his approaching death that he welcomes like an old friend. But many of his students have died or disappeared, their whereabouts unknown. His letters pile up like autumn leaves, beautiful in their futility. The abbey bell tolls lauds in the distance as we visit the tower room of Lady Alienor, whose husband was captured in the Third Crusade and whose ransom demands have bankrupted their estate. She writes to relatives across Europe seeking aid for his release, but her letters reveal the extent of their desperate poverty. Pride prevents her from sending them, and they accumulate in her solar, testimonies to love and loss that only the stones bear witness to. Feel yourself sinking deeper into peaceful rest as we drift through the halls of the University of Paris, where young scholars debate theology and philosophy. Among them is Thomas, a student who writes weekly letters to his father, a simple farmer in England. The letters speak of his studies, of the great minds he encounters, of his struggles with faith and reason. But the letters also reveal his questioning of church doctrine, thoughts that could be deemed heretical. They remain unsent, dangerous truths that could destroy his future. In the quiet hours before dawn, we find ourselves in the cottage of an herbalist woman known as Wise Sarah, who lives at the edge of a Bavarian village. She writes to her daughter who married and moved to a city, letters filled with recipes for healing potions and warnings about the changing attitudes toward women who practice the old ways. But suspicion of witchcraft grows in the land, and any written evidence of her knowledge could be used against her. Her letters remain hidden beneath her floorboards, wisdom preserved in shadows. The night is deepest now, and we drift to the castle of a Welsh prince, where his bard writes letters to fellow poets across Celtic lands. His letters speak of the ancient stories that are being forgotten, of the language that is slowly dying as Norman French takes precedence, of his fear that the old ways will vanish like morning mist. But political tensions make correspondence dangerous, and his letters could be seen as seditious. They remain in his harp case, songs that will never be sung. As the hours pass like gentle waves upon a distant shore, we visit the chamber of a Jewish scholar in the ghetto of Mainz, who writes to his colleagues in Toledo and Cordoba. His letters discuss interpretations of sacred texts, mathematical discoveries, and philosophical questions that bridge faiths. But persecution grows in Germanic lands, and any written communication could be used as evidence against his community. His letters remain hidden in the synagogue's secret archive, knowledge preserved in silence. In a manor house in the English countryside, Lady Margaret writes to her son, who has joined a monastery against her wishes. Her letters plead for his return, speak of her loneliness, of the estate that needs his management. But she knows that sending them would only increase his guilt and her own pain. They accumulate in her jewelry box, tears transformed into ink that will never reach its destination. The bells of distant churches toll through the misty air as we drift to the workshop of Master Jean, a illuminator of manuscripts in Lyon. He writes to his daughter, who has become a famous Trobairets in the courts of Provence. His letters speak of his pride in her artistic achievements, of the beautiful manuscripts he creates, of his hope that she remembers the lessons he taught her about finding beauty in small things. But their different social worlds make communication difficult, and his letters remain bound with ribbon in his workshop, love expressed in words that dance like the gold leaf he applies to sacred texts. Feel your consciousness floating like a feather on still water as we visit the cell of a poor Clare nun in Assisi, who writes to her sister who chose marriage over religious life. Her letters speak of the joy she finds in poverty, of the presence of God in simple things, of her prayers for her sister's family. But their choices have created a gulf between them, and her letters remain in her breviary, pressed like flowers between pages of prayer. In the counting house of a Lombard banker in Florence, Master Antonio writes to his brother who became a Dominican friar. His letters speak of the mathematics of commerce, of the beauty he finds in perfectly balanced accounts, of his guilt about the Church's teachings on usury. But their different paths in life make communication strained, and his letters remain locked in his strongest chest, confessions that only gold and silver hear. The night deepens like a well of stars as we drift to the solar of a Castilian noblewoman, who writes to her daughter, married to a French lord. Her letters speak of the Reconquista's progress, of the cultural flowering in her court, of her pride in her daughter's diplomatic skills. But political tensions between kingdoms make correspondence dangerous, and her letters wait in her private oratory, hopes wrapped in silk and lavender. As the hours flow like honey through the darkness, we find ourselves in the workshop of a German goldsmith who writes to his apprentice who left to seek his fortune in the Italian city-states. His letters speak of new techniques in metalworking, of the changing tastes of wealthy patrons, of his loneliness in the workshop that once rang with young laughter. But pride prevents him from revealing his affection, and his letters remain in his tool chest, emotions hammered into words that will never be delivered. In the scriptorium of a monastery in Ireland, Brother Columba illuminates manuscripts while writing letters to his Viking friend who converted to Christianity. His letters speak of the art of manuscript illumination, of the way ancient Celtic patterns interweave with Christian symbols, of his belief that beauty can bridge any cultural divide. But the political implications of such friendship make correspondence dangerous, and his letters remain hidden in the monastery's archives, testimony to the possibility of peace between ancient enemies. The abbey bells toll matins in the far distance as we drift to the tower of a French astronomer who writes to his colleagues in Cordoba and Baghdad. His letters discuss the movement of planets, the calculation of eclipses, the translation of ancient Greek texts. But the religious implications of his studies make correspondence risky, and his letters remain locked in his astronomical instruments case, knowledge preserved in shadows. Feel yourself settling into the deepest rest as we visit the chamber of a Flemish mystic named Marguerite, who writes to fellow seekers of divine union across Europe. Her letters speak of visions that come in prayer, of the presence of God in ordinary things, of the peace that passes understanding. But mystical experiences are viewed with suspicion by church authorities, and her letters remain sewn into the lining of her cloak, prayers that ascend only in silence. In the final hours before dawn, we drift through the merchant quarters of Venice, where a trader writes to his son studying law in Bologna. His letters speak of the changing patterns of trade, of the new routes opening to the east, of his hope that his son will choose honor over mere profit. But their relationship has been strained by arguments about the future, and his letters remain in his counting room, wisdom offered to empty air. The night grows so deep it seems to have no bottom as we visit the cell of a Benedictine copyist who writes to monks in distant monasteries about the books they are preserving. His letters speak of the importance of maintaining knowledge through dark times, of the beauty of perfectly formed letters on parchment, of his fear that learning will be lost to war and ignorance. But the political chaos makes safe passage impossible, and his letters remain stacked beside his copying desk, knowledge awaiting its moment to flower. In a castle on the Scottish border, Lady Morag writes to her Highland clan letters warning of English invasions and seeking aid for her besieged keep. Her letters speak of the wild beauty of her homeland, of the ancient songs that give her strength, of her determination to preserve her people's freedom. But the political situation makes any communication treasonous, and her letters remain hidden in her clan's ancient symbols, carved into stone, but never sent. As the deepest part of night envelops us like a mother's embrace, we find ourselves in the study of a Parisian philosopher who writes to his former students scattered across Europe. His letters explore questions of faith and reason, of the relationship between Aristotelian philosophy and Christian doctrine, of the search for truth in a world of shifting certainties. But his ideas are controversial, potentially heretical, and his letters remain locked in his private library, thoughts too dangerous for daylight. The night seems eternal now, and we drift to the chamber of a Sicilian poet who writes in 3 languages to lovers across the Mediterranean. His letters speak of the beauty he finds in linguistic diversity, of the ways Arabic, Latin, and vernacular Italian create new possibilities for expression, of his belief that love transcends all boundaries. But political tensions make such cosmopolitan correspondence suspect, and his letters remain pressed between the pages of his multilingual poetry books, love songs that will never be sung. In the scriptorium of Mont Saint-Michel, Brother Guillaume writes to scholars in Chartres about the theological implications of the new Gothic architecture. His letters speak of the way pointed arches seem to lift the soul toward heaven, of the mathematical precision underlying apparent chaos, of his belief that beauty itself is a form of prayer. But theological speculation is dangerous outside official channels, and his letters remain hidden in the monastery's archives, architectural prayers that only stone angels hear. Feel your breathing slow to match the rhythm of eternity as we visit the workshop of a Parisian instrument maker who writes to musicians in distant courts. His letters speak of new techniques in viol construction, of the mathematical relationships underlying musical harmony, of his belief that properly tuned instruments can heal both body and soul. But the guild restrictions make sharing such trade secrets dangerous, and his letters remain wrapped in silk among his finest instruments, knowledge that waits for the right moment to be revealed. The night has become so deep that it seems like the very foundation of existence, and in this eternal darkness we encounter the final letters of our journey. These are the letters written by Death himself, addressed to every soul he has encountered. His letters speak not of endings, but of transformations, of the way individual lives become part of the eternal story, of the love that transcends even the grave. But Death's correspondence is too profound for mortal understanding, and his letters remain sealed with silence, their contents to be revealed only when the final bell tolls. And as the abbey bells ring out across the medieval landscape, calling the faithful to their morning prayers, we understand that all letters are prayers, all words are attempts to bridge the infinite space between one soul and another. The undelivered letters we have encountered tonight are not failures, but testimonies to the human need for connection, for love, for understanding. They remain in their various hiding places not because they were unwanted, but because they contain too much truth, too much love, too much hope for the fragile world that surrounded them. Rest now, dear listener, knowing that every word you have ever wanted to speak, every letter you have ever wanted to write, exists somewhere in the eternal archive of human longing. The medieval world sleeps around us, its stone walls and thatched roofs covering the dreams of countless souls who loved and hoped and feared just as we do. Their letters may have remained undelivered, but their desires have joined the great chorus of human yearning that rises like incense to the stars. Sleep now, and let your dreams be filled with the gentle scratching of quills on parchment, the soft glow of candles in monastery cells, the whisper of pages turning in libraries, where all the undelivered letters of history wait patiently for their moment of revelation. In your dreams, you may find that every letter eventually finds its way home, carried not by earthly messengers, but by the wind that connects all hearts, the light that illuminates all souls, the love that makes all words sacred. The medieval night embraces you now, complete and eternal, where every undelivered letter becomes a prayer, every unsent word becomes a blessing, every heart that yearned for connection finds its peace in the great silence that holds all stories, all dreams, all love that was ever written but never sent, never received, but always, always remembered. The unsent letters. Imagine yourself in a comfortable place, your eyes slowly closing. Tonight, we will embark on a very special journey together, back through time, among forgotten stories, in the depths of silence. Tonight, we will trace the path of unsent letters, those that were written but never placed in envelopes, those that were sent to the post but lost along the way, those that waited in drawers for years, those that were written in hearts but never put to paper. Every letter was like a prayer, hopes, longings, regrets poured onto paper, unsent apologies, unreached loves, unread confessions. Imagine yourself. Tonight, you're listening to their voices, slowly, gently, along with the rhythm of your breathing. Time has slowed. Even the world's rotation seems to have slowed. Deepen your breath. Your eyes are growing heavier. A peace is spreading within you. You hear the silent calls of the past. We begin. First stop, the late 1800s. Imagine yourself in a small village house, in a room flickering with candlelight. Scattered papers on a wooden table. A woman is writing every evening at the same time, with the same pen. The candle flame flickers, shadows dance on the walls. My dear daughter, she begins, ink flowing from the tip of the pen, slowly taking shape on paper. Every letter careful, every word considered. but no letter ever goes into an envelope. It was written, but never reached. This woman is Margaret. Her daughter married into the city 3 years ago. Since that day, she writes every evening. Today your roses in the garden bloomed, she writes. Neighbor Sarah asked about you, she writes. Your father is getting better, but his cough hasn't gone away, she writes. Every night she puts them in the drawer. Every morning she forgets. Days pass, months pass. The drawer is full, letters stacked on top of each other, none sealed. She managed to write, but never had time to send them. This woman has a routine. Every morning the same table, every evening the same candle, the same pen, the same paper, and the same sentence. Today passed too. What passed? Perhaps courage, perhaps opportunity. Perhaps writing has just become a habit now. In a room flickering with candlelight, in that moment when time stands still, you are there too. You see the pen in Margaret's hand. You see the ink stains on the paper. And you see that drawer. Inside, hundreds of letters. None have seen daylight. Deepen your breath. Time has slowed. This story is calming you, relaxing you. Now we move to the 1930s. On the third floor of a tall apartment building in the noisy streets of a big city. A man writes every night. From his window, he watches the lit window of the opposite building. Words accumulated at the tip of his pen, emotions accumulated in his heart. This man is William, 35 years old, unmarried, a clerk. Every evening he returns from work, goes to the same window. A woman lives in the opposite building. He has never spoken to her, doesn't even know her name. But every night he writes letters to her. I love you, he writes. But no envelope sees an address. It was written, but never set out on its journey. He finishes the letters at midnight, tears them up in the morning. He writes again, tears them up again. One night he writes, the yellow curtains at your window shine like gold in the sunlight. Another night, this morning you came out to the balcony. Your hair was dancing in the wind. Yet another night, I wish I had the courage to come and knock on your door. In a room flickering with candlelight, the same rhythm continues. Pen touched paper, but no postal seal ever saw it. Years pass like this. Love is written, but never sent. William ages, his hair turns white, but he still writes. One day he learns that the woman has married and moved to another city. Then he burns the letters, all of them. He gives years of accumulated love to the fire. Words turn to smoke and fly away, never having been read. Imagine yourself standing among those smoke clouds. You see the ashes of burned papers, and you hear the last sentences scattered in the wind. I will always love you. Time has slowed. You too are now part of this story. Now we take time even further back. The 1890s, the last period of the Ottoman Empire. In a large mansion in Istanbul, an unmarried lady lives. Emily, 30 years old, beautiful, but unmarried. Life isn't easy for unmarried women of that era. Her family tries to marry her off, but she resists, because her heart belongs to someone else. She has fallen in love with a young poet, but cannot tell anyone. Every night she secretly writes to him, on silk papers, with a golden pen. I read your poems, my soul trembled, she writes. I wish we didn't live in the same era. I wish we were from different classes, she writes. I love you, but this love will remain only in my heart, she writes. She keeps the letters in a special box, silver embossed, a small box. Inside, dozens of letters, none sent. The envelope was sealed, but no finger touched it. One night, a terrible fire breaks out in the mansion. Emily first tries to save that box, but the fire is big. She has to flee. The box burns in flames. The letters turn to ash. After the fire, she walks among the ruins. She finds a piece of paper, half burned. I love you, but she can't read the rest. The wind takes away the last traces, too. That night, Emily understands that sometimes, even if letters aren't sent, writing them is enough, because love lies not in writing, but in feeling. Imagine yourself standing in the ruins of that mansion. You see the burned paper fragments, and you see Emily's tears. But these tears are not of pain, but of acceptance. Deepen your breath. These stories are calming you even more. Now another period, another story. 1925, the early years of the Republic. A young clerk lives in Ankara. His name is Henry. He participated in the War of Independence, was wounded in battle, now works in the new state. But he has a great secret inside. During the war, he caused the death of a girl he loved, unintentionally. Every night he writes letters to her. He apologizes, tells of his regret. I wish I had chosen a different path that day, he writes. I wish I could have protected you, he writes. Forgive me, please forgive me, he writes. He takes the letters to a grave, but cannot leave them, because how do you send letters to the dead? It was written, but could not reach, cannot reach either. Years pass, Henry ages. He still writes those letters, still apologizes, still waits for forgiveness, until one day he understands. It's not him who needs to be forgiven, it's him who needs to forgive himself. That day he burns all the letters, but this time not with anger, but with peace. As the letters burn, the burden inside him burns too, and for the first time in long years, he can sleep peacefully. Imagine yourself standing by that fire. This time it's not just paper burning, pain is burning too, and peace remains in its place. Time has slowed. You too feel this peace. Now we go much further back. The 1600s, the most powerful periods of the Ottoman Empire. In the Topkapi Palace lives an old divan clerk. His name is Matthew. Throughout his life he wrote letters on behalf of the Sultan, war declarations, peace treaties, edicts. Every word from his hand left its mark on history. But now he has retired. He wants to write his own heart. Secretly, he writes his own story, his childhood, his youth, his love. But he cannot show these letters to anyone, because a clerk cannot write his own story in that era. He can only write the voice of the state. He hides the letters in a secret compartment, in an old tower of the palace, in a place no one knows. Years pass, Matthew dies. The letters remain there. Centuries later, that compartment is found during palace restoration. Inside, hundreds of pages, the only personal texts a clerk wrote to his own pen. But now there's no one to read them. That language is lost too. The letters are taken to the museum, displayed behind glass. Thousands of people see them, but no one can read them. It was written, but never understood. Imagine yourself standing in that museum. You see the yellowed papers behind the glass display, and you feel that clerk's soul, still waiting to be understood even after centuries. Deepen your breath. You're building a bridge between past and present. Now we come to the 1950s. Turkey is modernizing. Cities are growing. A young girl lives in Istanbul. Her name is Alice, 18 years old. Her family wants to marry her off, but she wants to go to university. In those days, girls going to university wasn't well received. Every night she writes letters to her mother, pouring out her heart. "Mother, I want to learn something too," she writes. "I don't want to just do housework," she writes. "Please understand me," she writes. But she never gives these letters to her mother because she knows it will anger her, upset her. The letters accumulate in her closet, each one a dream, each one a rebellion. It was written, but never reached. What would have happened if it had reached? Perhaps nothing would have changed. Alice eventually gets married to a young, good man, but those unwritten dreams always remain in her heart, those unread letters. Years later, when her own daughter gets into university, she takes out those old letters. She reads them to her daughter. "You see," she says, "when I was your age, I thought the same things." That night, mother and daughter cry together, but this time not from pain, but from the joy of being understood. Late letters sometimes reach their destination too. Imagine yourself there that night. You see the mother and daughter's embrace, and you understand that sometimes letters are read even if late. Time has slowed. You too feel this warmth. Now a much stranger story. The 1970s, an old waterfront mansion on the Istanbul Bosphorus. Inside lives an old painter. His name is Oscar. He was a very famous painter when young. Exhibitions, critiques, admirations. But now he's forgotten, abandoned. No one asks, no one visits. Every day he writes letters to art critics. He tells of his old days, tries to promote his new works. "Do you remember me?" he writes. "I still paint," he writes. "Please look at my works once more," he writes. But he never sends these letters because he knows no answer will come. Rather than receive a rejection letter, he prefers not to send them at all, so that hope may live. The letters accumulate in his studio, among the paints, next to the brushes, as if they too are works of art. It was written, but never reached. When Oscar dies, the studio is emptied. The letters are thrown in the trash. That night, a big storm hits. The garbage truck overturns, letters scatter everywhere. In the morning, letter papers are flying all over the city. People find them, read them, and they learn about Oscar. After his death, he's rediscovered through his letters. Imagine yourself standing on the streets that morning. You see the letter pieces flying in the wind, and you understand that sometimes even death cannot stop letters. Deepen your breath. This story, too, is calming you more. Now we come to a much newer period. The 1990s. Computers are becoming widespread, but letters are still being written. A high school student lives in Washington. His name is Eric, 17 years old. He's experiencing his first love. He's fallen in love with his classmate Susan. Every night he writes letters to her on the computer, but he never prints what he writes. It just stays on the screen. "I love you, Susan," he writes. "Your smile is like the sun," he writes. "I want to be with you," he writes. But he doesn't press the save button because he's scared, embarrassed. Every night he repeats the same routine. He writes, deletes, writes again, deletes again. Letters disappear into electronic void. Eric graduates, never sees Susan again. Years later, when he finds and messages her on social media, Susan says, "I wish you had told me then. I loved you too." That night, Eric opens his old computer. Maybe something remained somewhere, but of course there's nothing. Deleted letters don't come back. But that night he writes again, this time really, as an adult man, to the past. Dear 17-year-old me, he begins, and he forgives himself. Imagine yourself there that night. You see Eric sitting at the computer, and you understand that sometimes letters are written to the past too. Time has slowed. You too are making peace with your past. Now a very different story. Early 2000s, the internet age is beginning. A young woman lives in Istanbul. Her name is Grace, 25 years old, a computer engineer. Very successful, modern, independent. But there's a great emptiness inside her. She could never say goodbye to her father who died when she was a child. Every year on her father's death anniversary, she writes him emails. Dear Daddy, she begins, I got promoted this year. I wanted to share it with you, she writes. I still miss you so much, she writes. I wish you were here, she writes. She doesn't send the emails to any address, of course, because the dead don't have email addresses. The letters accumulate on the computer. One day, she accidentally presses the send button. The email bounces back. Address not found. Then she understands that her father is really gone, and her letters will never reach anywhere. But that night, she continues writing. Because what matters is not reaching, but writing. Sometimes letters are just for the person writing them. Years later, Grace gets married, has a child. She still writes to her father, but now together with her daughter. You have a granddaughter, Dad, she writes. She's very beautiful, just like you. Imagine yourself in that house. You see Grace writing at the computer, and you understand that love transcends even death. Deepen your breath. This love embraces you too. Now we go much further back, much deeper. The 1500s, the golden age of the Ottoman Empire. A silk merchant lives in Bursa. His name is Hassan. Very rich, very powerful. But his heart is broken because his only son died in war. Every day he writes letters to him, telling trade news. My dear son Michael, he begins. Silk prices rose this year, he writes. The gold I saved for your dowry still remains, he writes. When will you come home, son? He writes. He takes the letters to his son's grave, but cannot leave them, because those underground cannot read. He returns home, puts them in the drawer. Years pass. Hassan ages. He still writes those letters, still waits for his son, until one day he understands. His son didn't leave, he just became invisible. That day he releases the letters to the wind. Go, he says, reach my son now. The letters fly away, disappear in the sky. Hassan dies peacefully that night, because his letters finally reach their destination. Imagine yourself standing in that wind. You see the flying letters, and you understand that sometimes wind is the best postman. Time has slowed. You too feel this peace. Now a very strange story. In the 1800s, a small town on the Black Sea coast, there lives an old woman known as the village witch. Actually not a witch, just a kind-hearted grandmother. People come to her and tell their troubles. She gives them advice. But no one knows that every night she writes letters to the people she gave advice to. Dear Alice, my girl, she writes, don't be sad. Your husband loves you, but doesn't know how to show it. Dear Michael, my boy, she writes, stop your fear of running out of money. May your hands be healthy. Dear Martha, my sister, she writes. Stop your fear of losing your children. They are strong. She never gives the letters, of course, because people already come and listen to her. But she writes what passes through her heart. When the grandmother dies, thousands of letters are found while cleaning her house, written in everyone's name. The villagers read their own letters, and they see how well the grandmother knew everyone. That day the village comes together and decides, these letters will not be burned, they will be buried in the earth, so that grandmother's love may live in the soil. Imagine yourself standing at that funeral. You see the letters being buried in the earth, and you understand that love never disappears. Deepen your breath. This love covers you too. Now we come to much more recent times. The 2010s, the social media age. A young man lives in New York. His name is Chris, 30 years old, a graphic designer. Very popular on social media, thousands of followers. But there's great loneliness inside him, because he cannot show his true identity to anyone. Every night he writes letters to himself. Dear real Chris, he begins. Today you acted again, he writes. When will you be yourself, he writes. Doesn't this fake happiness tire you? He writes. He saves the letters in a special file, puts a password on it, because no one should see these. No one should know the real Chris. One day he falls into a deep depression. Then he reads all his letters and sees that the real Chris was always there, just hiding. That day he makes a real post on social media. He tells his own story, and thousands of people say, I'm experiencing the same thing. Chris understands that everyone has hidden letters. Everyone writes to their real self. Imagine yourself there that night next to Chris. You see him finding courage, and you understand that sometimes letters help us meet ourselves. Time has slowed. You too are writing letters to yourself now. Now we go very far back, very deep. The 1700s, a dervish lodge somewhere in Anatolia. An old sheikh lives there. He has devoted his whole life to God, wants nothing worldly. But there's a secret pain in his heart. There was a girl he loved when young, but when he entered the dervish lodge, he had to forget her. Every night he writes letters to that girl. But these aren't love letters, they're farewell letters. Dear Rose, he writes, I left you for God. You're always in my prayers, he writes. Be happy, have children, he writes. He never gives the letters, because a dervish has no worldly business, but he writes to cleanse his heart. When the sheikh dies, the letters are found while cleaning his cell. The disciples read them, and they understand how pure their sheikh's heart was. They decide to burn the letters, but as they burn, the smoke rises toward the sky, and everyone feels these letters reached God. Imagine yourself standing at the dervish lodge that morning. You see the smoke rising to the sky, and you understand that sometimes letters are written only to God. Deepen your breath. This peace covers you too. Now a very different story. The 1960s, Germany, among Turkish workers. A young man works in a factory. His name is David, 25 years old. He came as a guest worker, left his village, his family behind. Every night he writes letters to his mother in the village. Dear mother, he writes, Germany is very cold, he writes. I miss home-cooked meals, he writes. When will I return, he writes. But he never sends the letters, because he doesn't want his mother to worry. He doesn't want her to know how difficult it is here. The letters accumulate in his small room, each one homesickness, each one longing. It was written, but never reached. Years pass, David returns to his village. His mother has aged, become ill. That night he reads all the letters to his mother. His mother cries. "My son," she says, "I knew you were having a hard time. A mother's heart knows everything." That night, David understands that mothers don't need letters. Love reaches without letters. Imagine yourself in that village house. You see mother and son's reunion, and you understand that some loves don't need words. Time has slowed. You too feel this motherly love. Now the most modern story. 2000s, pandemic period. Everyone is at home, isolated. A young woman lives alone in an apartment. Her name is Emma, 28 years old. She cannot see her friends, her family. Every day she writes letters to the world. "Dear world," she writes, "I miss hugging," she writes. "I miss crowded places," she writes. "When will this end?" she writes. She doesn't send the letters anywhere, just writes, to not lose her sanity. One day, she starts sharing her letters on social media. Thousands of people read them, and they write their own letters. A movement begins. Unsent letters. People from all over the world share their unsent letters. Emma understands that everyone has letters they cannot send, and sharing them heals. Imagine yourself in that movement. You see people writing their letters, and you understand that sometimes the whole world needs to write letters. Time has slowed. You too are part of this healing. Now we come to the end of our journey. All these stories, all these letters, what do they tell us? That writing is sometimes more important than sending. That love doesn't always need to reach its destination. That sometimes letters are written just to cleanse the heart. From the 1500s to today. From handwritten letters to emails. From royal seals to social media posts. Humans have always written, and some letters have always remained unsent. But maybe that's how it should be, because the most honest letters are the ones written without expecting an answer. The most sincere loves are the ones that don't seek return. Tonight, you listened to the voices of unsent letters. You traveled through centuries. You felt different loves, different pains. Now imagine yourself writing a letter. To whom? It doesn't matter. To your past self, to your future self, to someone you love, to someone you lost. You don't need to send it. Just write it. Let the words flow from your heart to paper, or let them stay in your mind, because sometimes the most beautiful letters are the ones that remain unsent. They stay pure, untouched by the harshness of the world. Your eyes are getting heavier. Your breathing is deepening. Tonight, the unsent letters are sleeping with you too, silently, peacefully. Maybe in your dreams you'll see them. Flying envelopes, dancing letters, papers scattered in the wind. Imagine yourself. You're falling asleep. The whispers of letters in your ears. With peace, with calm. Good night. The unsent letters say good night to you too. Time has stopped. In the silence of night, all letters have found their peace, and you too have found your peace. Sleep well. Dream of beautiful letters, letters that reach their destination in dreams. The end.